All right, it is now officially 6:30. We welcome you to the school board meeting of the Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation. Very nice of you all to be here with us. We start each of our meetings with reflections from one of our colleagues to start the evening, and tonight it is Dr. Bills.
One of my favorite actors is Clint Eastwood. So you're wondering what this has to do with anything, but it does have a point. In his movie, Pale Rider, we see the battle between good and evil, which is a regular theme in his movies. This movie makes me think about seemingly unsurmountable barriers which are overcome by working together. Sometimes it takes teamwork and hard work to overcome a barrier, but when it is overcome, I believe we have a richer experience.
Welcome to Schmidt. We're the home of the Rockets. Our current enrollment is 673. A little bit about our school's history. We were built in 1957 with an addition in 1991. And we are named after Miss Lillian C. Schmidt, who taught for 43 years. Some of the other stuff around the Rocket that makes us pretty special is our Choose Kind Club. It is comprised of little over 100 at the last meeting, student volunteers that come in every Wednesday morning to do some really awesome things at Schmidt. We have a robotics club that we have started this year and have had many students, actually a variety of students, participate in after school. And then, of course, UDL and PBIS are our frameworks that we work from. UDL designing our environments for all learners, PBIS, and this year incorporating restorative practices. And then the social emotional focus that we started with our school improvement plan last year to ensure our students' brains are ready to learn.
Hi, my name is Kate Edgren, and I'm the UDL facilitator here at Schmidt, but then also at Busy Bees. So I work in both places, but as we started this journey, we really had to start with the brain and what we know about brains, and that in order for kids to learn, they need to be ready to learn. And unfortunately, we have lots of students that we know in this day and age that are not only experiencing tolerable stress, but also toxic stress. And as indicated by the image over there, that actually can change their brain architecture. And so we want to do the very best job that we can to help buffer that toxic stress by protective relationships.
Hi, Patrick Mahaffey, assistant principal here. So what this intentionality has led us to is a 38% decrease in classroom discipline referrals over the last 2 years. So that's kind of where we are now, and where we plan to go is to continue being intentional in planning our PD, and that's PD for teachers and for support staff. So we'll continue investigating and researching restorative practices and sharing information with our parents. If you follow our Facebook page, we are pretty avid in sharing posts that parents can use as soon as they read it.
Thank you, Dr. Shedd. I'll just take a moment to do this. This is a presentation that takes about 90 minutes. Otherwise, we did have the opportunity on Friday morning, January the 25th, to share with our key community stakeholders the legislative priorities for our school corporation. We thought it would be helpful to lay these out so that legislators from our community would be very aware of where we stood as a school corporation, as well as all of the other advocates, hopefully, for public education within our community could understand them and help us push these legislative priorities through. So I will just go through the list quickly. The first two are in priority order. The others, not necessarily so, but we want to make sure and focus, number one, on improving teacher recruitment and retention in this state, in this community, by promoting the profession and increasing teacher pay. We've seen over, in particular the last decade, but perhaps even longer than that, a little bit of an eroding of attention and respect to that profession, and we want to ensure that people are paying the proper respect to the teaching profession. And so we're hoping that our legislators will help us as they go through this particular session. That increasing teacher pay is one way. There are many, perhaps, as to how to do that, but increasing pay is certainly one way to help accomplish that. So number one helps then lead into number two, which is to increase the tuition support funding for K through 12 students by a minimum of 1.5% above the cost of living adjustment. So we did want to set a very specific number Over the years, and just referring again to this last decade, there's been a failure to meet the cost of living adjustment when providing dollars to school. So we are advocating that when the decisions are made to increase the budget and dollars are provided to our school system, that there is a specific dollar amount in there that helps us meet the needs of our staff. The additional thing I would say for that one is it really isn't just only about increasing the tuition support funding, but also finding other creative ways to bring dollars into the classroom. Governor Holcomb last week during his State of the State address did have an idea about using some state reserve funds to pay off some pension bond debt. And if that is the case, then there are some expenditures that we have on a routine basis that we could then perhaps use differently. So it would save us from having to spend those dollars one way, and we could then choose to use those dollars another way, and specifically directed toward teacher pay. So that was a creative approach that at least Governor Holcomb gave last week during his State of the State. So we encourage increased tuition support funding overall, but also finding other creative ways that dollars could be put toward teachers, toward the classroom. The next one is removing barriers that restrict access to On My Way Pre-K. We are blessed as a county, Bartholomew County, to be able to offer On My Way Pre-K to our families, one of 20, I believe, in the state of Indiana out of the 92 counties. But we see barriers with that. So we will have families who are eligible to have their child in pre-K, or at least the young person that they are taking care of, guardians of. And so from an income standpoint, might be able to do that, but if they are a grandparent, they may face some challenges. We do know that grandparents sometimes have to raise a child. We have great-grandparents sometimes raising children. If you are a person who is not working, and if you're a grandparent, you may be retired, and if you are also not taking courses to help you get ready to work, and as a grandparent you probably aren't taking courses, then you are ineligible all of a sudden to have your child or the young person that you are serving as a guardian for to enroll in On My Way Pre-K. That's a barrier, in our opinion, and we like to see that changed. An additional barrier is one that doesn't value, in our opinion, the stay-at-home parent. So you may have parents who are doing a great job of taking care of their young child. One is staying at home, the other one is trying to work and make a living for that family. If that is the case, both parents are supposed to be working, according to On My Way Pre-K. So we have a situation where a family is trying to have a parent stay at home. We certainly, as a school corporation, advocate for parent support, parent engagement, parent involvement, helping get that child ready for us here. And that doesn't seem to be supported with that kind of barrier in regards to the criteria for enrolling. So a couple of things, just examples that I mentioned, that we'd like to see those barriers, those barriers that restrict access removed. In terms of extending the kindergarten ADM, we are not talking here about just allowing every child by October 1st, as long as they're 5, to get into school. August 1st is the date. However, we've had the flexibility in the past to let a child into our kindergarten program at an early age. So we screen the child demonstrates readiness, and we bring them into our school system. Unfortunately, a year ago, the state said, sorry, we're not going to let you do that anymore. You can let the child in, but we're not going to give you funding for the child. We don't believe that's appropriate, so we would advocate for at least a date of October 1st. If we screen a child, they are ready to get into kindergarten, they are 5 by October 1st, let us admit that child and count the child for funding. There's a count day in the middle of September that we abide by. So at least by that count day, if the child is 5, then let us count that child for funding. We're advocating on that. Number 5 is to appropriate necessary funds to fulfill current statutory commitment to English language learners. We have about 1,200 English language learners that we are serving within the school corporation. There is statutory language that is supposed to give us a certain number of dollars per child. Because the appropriation that was set didn't match up with that statutory language, we received over the last 2 years, a year ago, this year combined, about $1 million, over $900,000 that we did not receive that could have went toward our efforts to help for our English language learner students. So statute said, here's the formula, you should get this much. The appropriation didn't allow that much to get spent across the state of Indiana when all the math was done, so we got a much lesser amount. We would like to at least see the appropriation meet the statutory language that already exists. And then lastly, provide school safety funding equitably to all school corporations without reducing support in other places. And so there are grants available, but oftentimes those grants are hard to secure From a Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation standpoint, we've been pretty fortunate to be able to compete for those grants, have the matching funds to support those grants, and receive them. There are some school corporations that simply don't have the same opportunities to put up the matching dollars, for example. We also believe that the competitive nature of these grants should be pushed aside, that we should have a pot of money available for safety in the school, in the state, and all school corporations be able to access those dollars. Lastly, we talked about social emotional well-being. We believe that safety funding should be able to go toward social and emotional health. So not just the hardening of our buildings, training for certain things, school resource officers, but also addressing the social and emotional needs of our students. So those are our 6 identified priorities. I appreciated the Republic's coverage of our event on Friday. There was a good article, I believe yesterday, Sunday, that covered that information. So there is some written print materials out there too. So any media attention we can get in regards to these priorities, we are certainly hoping to receive. But these are the ideas that we have out there for us to ponder as the legislative session goes on. A reminder, this is a long session this year, so they have until April 29th to get the budget and everything else wrapped up. So we'll be following things closely from now, I guess that's 3 months, now to the end of April.
Good evening. In 2018, House Bill 1230 enacted all public schools in the state of Indiana to develop school safety plans to submit to the state and then be audited and inspected for compliance. Those comprise of 24 checklist items that would turn into a 19-page document for each school, and then a site visit by a state auditor that would review all the site plans. Some of those items included in that safety plan are emotional support for students after an event of crisis or tragedy, student training of evacuations, staff training, consultation with law enforcement, media protocols for the district, and evacuations of processes for students or staff with disabilities, among some other items. Just want to report that we have a letter from the state saying that all of our schools are 100% compliant on those school safety plans, well ahead of the deadline of August of 2019.
Mrs. Day, thank you and your staff for hosting us for the last 2 sessions. It's been fun. The tour was really good by the team, and I love the video.
Again, Ms. Day, thank you. This was wonderful. I appreciate the presentation and all the work you're doing for our learners here.